I want to talk a little bit about outcomes. One of those things that is so commonly talked about in things like NLP. It's all about where you want to be, where you want to get to, the kind of stuff that you want. But think about it. When people talk about outcomes, they so often use the language of geography. We talk about trying to get to a better place. We talk about moving forwards to get to our goals. We talk about reaching the outcome. Getting to where we want to be in life, getting to the outcome, reaching the goal. Outcomes rely on the language of geography. Now this is kind of interesting because if you think about it, outcomes require going from one place to the other place. A common thing that I see is when people get to the place that they want to be, they often don't know what to do next. So they go back to what they did before. Often say this with weight loss. The person wants to lose weight. They know the weight they want to get to. They want to get to the location using the language of geography. But when they get to the weight they want to be, they then go back to what they did before. So they go forwards to the goal and then they go back to where they want to be. Then they go forwards to the goal and back to the where they want to be. And it becomes a very well-trodden path, often manifested as a yo-yo dieting. So go backwards and forwards. Now, if we listen to how people talk about outcomes, we tend to see a number of patterns emerging. Now, I personally, in terms of therapeutic work, have a number of issues with the well-formed outcome model and the need for therapists to find a happy outcome for their client. It's almost as if the client has spent an hour, maybe 2 hours in the company of the therapist, and the therapist is looking for, can they make enough of an impact upon the client's emotional system and their thinking processes that the client will now be successful in achieving their goals. Now the client may be 40 years old, they've had 40 years of stuff, 2 hours of intervention, and amazingly all of those goals will now be fulfilled. And the way that's measured is at the end of the session. So we haven't actually done anything yet, the client hasn't gone back into their life, but they feel differently. And because they feel differently, then of course everything must be different. Now, in terms of outcomes, this is the issue that I have. The majority of therapists, or what I call alphabet therapists, so they might be doing NLP, EMDR, EFT, IEMT, or any of the other alphabet therapies. Often there is a kinesthetic sampling that occurs to find out how the client is. So how are you feeling? We may assign a score out of 10, so how strong is the feeling? And then at the end of the session, what we do is we ask the client, so when you think about the problem now, how do you feel? If they tell us that they feel better, they feel differently, then hallelujah, we've got an outcome. But actually, is that a reasonable outcome? Is it possible for a person to have a massive kinesthetic shift within a session, but in terms of outcomes, there is no beneficial occurrence whatsoever? Is it also possible that at the end of the session, the client doesn't feel any different whatsoever, but actually they're now in a much better position to be achieving the outcome? If all we have is kinesthetic sampling to find out whether our work is any good, then this is going to be problematic. I can give you an example, and I'm not going to name any names, but the temptation to do so here is almost overwhelming. I know a number of people who are trainers in the field of whatever it is they're in. They've selected alphabet therapy. Sorry, it's not therapy, it's development. Oh no, it's training. Oh no, it's education, or whatever that is. And the way that they deal with the difficulties in their own life is by changing the way that they feel. They may be spinning feelings in different directions. They may be making pictures smaller and further away. They may be swishing this, six-stepping that, or tapping, or moving their eyes, or whatever it is that is required to get the kinesthetic shift. But picture the following scenario. I feel bad and I feel overwhelmed by the task of doing my tax return. And there's a lot to do and it just makes me feel terrible. I know what I'll do. I will make the pictures smaller and further away and I'll just put them out of my mind and I'll think about kittens. I can feel different. Instantly I can say, wow, I feel so much different. But if we're doing that kind of thing for a client, have we done them any benefit? Because is there any change other than the creation of kinesthetic denial of a real world situation? The converse of that is the client who is profoundly and clinically depressed. So they have cognitive retardation, they have very clouded, woolly thinking, they're unable to stop sobbing without relief, they're not sleeping properly, they got the jitters, they've got an over-arousal of the autonomic nervous system. And in the space of 1 hour, when we measure at the end of the session, so how do you feel now, the chances are they're not going to feel that different. But is that to say that we haven't done any input or any work? Because biologically there's a lot of stuff that's got to catch up. Now, this is what I put out to therapists. If your only way of measuring outcome, or more importantly, the only way of measuring change relies on kinesthetic sampling, you need to do more. Needless to say, I have a suggestion for what you could do differently. And it's to pay attention to some of the aspects of the language that clients will use, or people use generally, with regards to outcomes. Now, outcomes have predominantly 4 factors that must be fulfilled in order for the outcome to be achievable. I'll draw it for you, makes it easier. If this here is where the person is, and that's the destination, that's where they want to get to. So, in order to get from A to B, the outcome they want to reach, the place they want to get to, they have to have, well, they need to know where they're going. That's a good start. Now that location is measured by 2 variables. It's measured by a combination of the direction and also distance. Direction plus distance will give you the location. So, direction is which way you go, distance is how far you're going to go to get there. Now, in order to get from there to there, what you require are 2 variables, which is a mode of travel plus the rate of travel. Now, you will hear these in people's language, everyday language, and it's once you hear them, it's almost impossible to not hear them. Let me give some examples of direction. I just don't know where I'm going. I don't know where you're leading me with this. I just feel so lost. I seem to be going round in circles. It's like I took the wrong turn somewhere. I just seem to lack direction. I don't know where I'm going. Where are you leading me with this? So we have a lot of things around about absence of direction that people will often use in the description of their difficulties. Now, distance is another area, and this is how far a person is prepared to go. Sometimes people keep falling short of the mark. Other times people may overstep the mark. They may have a long way to go. They may say, I've come a long way. I'm going to go the 4 mile with this. I've got what it takes to go all the way with this. I don't seem to be making any progress whatsoever. I seem to be at standstill. So there's the distance of movement as well. Now, mode of travel is kind of interesting. In the metaphors of movement model, we give primary consideration to people's feet. Your feet is what is in contact with the earth. You take 1 step at a time. You put your best foot forward. You can take a leap of faith. You can jump in with both feet. You can take a stand. You can put the right foot forward. You can take the right steps. You can pussyfoot around. You can drag your heels. You can put your foot in it. There's all sorts of stuff around feet. In the Metaphors of Movement manual, we currently have about 90 everyday expressions that refer to placing of the feet in order to create movement. And the rate of travel is, of course, the pace by which you move. And pacing is, of course, what you do with your feet. Except some people are going at a snail's pace, which implies they're not moving by their feet, they're doing something else. Now, clients will tell you explicitly, although they may not hear themselves say this, which one or more of these areas they're missing. For example, somebody might say, I know I've got what it takes to go all the way with this, and I know exactly the steps I'm going to take, and I'm going to do this at my own pace. What I need you to help me with is the direction in which I go. And then the therapist says, I tell you what, what's your intention behind all of this? So we have a massive mismatch. The person may well say, I know I'm going to go forwards with this. And I know I'm going to take a leap of faith, which implies, of course, the mode of travel and the rate, because they're leaping. It's a leap of faith, and they're going to go forwards with this. But I don't know how far to go with it. So again, it's distance here that is the issue that's missing. So if we listen to the client's language, we can start to hear explicitly what it is that the person needs help with. And we can start to tailor very clearly what it is we're trying to achieve with the client. Now, in terms of getting the person to be able to move from A to B, and then obviously from B, either to make home there or to go on to the next destination, we need to hear this stuff. But the question that I have is, are feelings actually all that important? But also, more importantly, is the outcome relevant at all? This is one of those considerations, and in a number of workshops it has gone to quite heated arguments with different people taking different positions on this. Is an outcome actually of any value in therapy? Sometimes it will be, and sometimes it won't be. Let me give you an example of a time that it wasn't. I was walking through a shopping mall and I found a small child who was lost. And I could tell because she was standing there sniffing, looking decidedly lost. So I said, hey, you look lost. And she nodded. And I said, don't worry, kid, you're in luck. I am an NLP practitioner. So I looked at her and I said, go to the part of you that's lost, and I want you to ask that part's positive intention. And I did a quick process around the intention of being lost. And I said to her, so how do you feel now? Do you feel any better? And she was like, So I said, okay, I'm not convinced. So now I want you to take those pictures of being lost and make those pictures smaller and further away and smaller and further away. Really not that much use to her. There, an outcome where she needs to be taken to or shown to go to is very relevant. That is in terms of the direction, the distance, how far, and how she's going to get there. But a lot of people, they don't know where they are. It's very easy to go on a workshop, and in the workshop you get all energized, you do lots of whooping, there's lots of clapping and cheering and all the new friends being made, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But the person comes out of there feeling like they can change the world. They come out of there feeling like, yes, they're going to go for it. They're going to create empires. They're going to change the world. They have the secret, the key to the universe. But the reality is they may not have any resources by which to do that. They may be lacking the intellect. I mean, got to be realistic here. They may be lacking the maintained motivation to be able to do stuff. They may be lacking financial resource and opportunity, networks and connections and education and training and just basic ability. But they feel that they can do it. The reality is, maybe it's very different to that. Now, this is what I'm doing in therapy, and this is what I'm doing in the Metaphors of Movement model. It's identifying where the person is. Your start point is much more important than the finishing point. You see, we can take the pictures of the outcome and make them as big and as grandiose and as fantastic as you like. But if you don't know where your starting point is, then you have no hope of getting there. Because once you know the start point here, you then know your next step. Once you've taken that step, you can work out the step after that. So the steps that they take are more important than actually having the great big outcome. The outcome's useful for setting the direction, of course, but we have to find out where the person is. This is my observation. People are really, really good at basically denial. They can tell themselves the story, and in certain communities they're encouraged to create this story, which actually is not congruent with the reality of their lives and the reality of their starting point. It's the This kind of I'm more than I actually am, therefore I pay attention to the dream and I try and achieve the dream rather than actually face what is the reality and the one step I need to take to move in that direction. And then they find other people in that community who facilitate their opportunity to further that denial. So if you want to know more about this kind of work, and I have to admit, there are people finding this rather controversial, and I quite like that. Those that know me will be familiar with that aspect. Go to the website www.metaphorofmovement.com. That's all the W's, metaphorofmovement.com. You'll have a look on the website. There's training details, there's a number of articles on there, there's some other videos. And if you've got any queries, get in touch. The email's on the website, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.